Introducing GeoLocs, geolocation built exclusively for iGaming, cost-effective, lightning-fast integration, and guaranteed compliance. Live for over 10 years. Partnered with over 12 operators across North America. Robust solution performing 18+ million geolocation checks per day. Lightning-fast SDK integration with rapid deployment in as little as 5 days. Improved UX with no additional downloads. Easy to use and intuitive self-service portal with real-time data visualizations. Data export and audit log for enhanced reporting and player insights. Easily UAT testing ensuring precision and accuracy before going live. Location-based marketing increasing player engagement and retention. All this and trusted by some of the biggest names in iGaming across North America. Trust GeoLocs to elevate your iGaming experience.
Hello and welcome to the Next I.O. Spotlight with me, Oisín Lunny. I help great people, companies and organisations tell their best stories through events, through podcasts and through digital experiences like this. And I'm absolutely thrilled today to be joined by our good friend Stuart Godfree, who is the Managing Director at Mobile Technology and Geolocation Specialists at the mighty mkodo. Welcome to the Spotlight, Stuart. How are you doing?
Oh, Finn, I'm doing really well. Good to see you again.
Yeah, great to see you again. So we actually did have a chat about this a few weeks ago, again on the Next I.O. Spotlight sessions. And it was so fascinating, we decided to invite you back because there's so much happening around geolocation. There's so much happening, particular with our good friends over on the other side of the USA. And there's a lot that people really should know about, unless they particularly like orange jumpsuits even, shall we say. So Stuart, let's set the scene just in case anybody missed the last session. Talk to us a bit about who are mkodo and what do you do?
Yeah, thanks for that. So we do a number of different types of things, but fundamentally we specialize in doing apps and websites for the betting, gaming and lottery space. That's one of our major criteria of business that we do. And from that, we have a number of middleware solutions that we've been providing to our customers for over 20 years now. So we've been in the space for quite a long time. But one of the major items that are becoming very prominent now that we've been supporting our clients for over 12 years is geolocation compliance. This actually all came about by Apple when Apple first allowed betting and gaming products into the European app stores way back when I was a young child. In fact, it's not entirely true. Back in 2010, 2011, they required geolocation, geofencing solution so that, yes, you could have an app in the UK App Store, but you could only use it while in the licensed area of the UK, for example. So we built out a geolocation platform for that, which we subsequently been selling to all our app-based clients since basically early 2010, 2011.
Outstanding. Yes, I remember those halcyon days myself, many moons ago, of course. I similarly was incredibly young back in 2010. But a lot has happened since then. You know, like we've graduated into a global species of Homo sapiens. Anything that we can do on our phones, we do on our phones. And this has big implications for the iGaming world. Now, you've been providing this for a while, but let's talk about what particularly is so important about providing good, reliable, trustworthy geolocation on mobile devices in the iGaming sector.
I mean, there's a whole broad gamut of reasons why geolocation, as we call it, geolocation compliance is important. But some of the main things is obviously Apple, for example, when you launch an app into whatever app store that you launch it into, they go through a series of checks and tests, which they call the App Store review process. And part of that for real money gaming products is that you have a license to support that product in the geograph that license is allowed for. So, for example, if I have an app in the UK, you can hear from my accent that I'm based in the UK, that I have a gambling license in the UK and that my app is geo-fenced in the UK. Equally, if I have a license in Ontario, that my app is in the Canadian App Store, I have a license for Ontario and it's geo-fenced for Ontario. If I have an app for New York State, it's in the American App Store, and so on and so on and so on. So it's incredibly important, and Apple do verify and test all this, but also what's more important, this is the regional regulator enforces that on you as well. So in Ontario, which is one of the markets I've just recently opened up to just 2-year anniversary just gone, by the way. The important thing there is that you can only provide real money gaming services to somebody who is in Ontario.
Right.
So when we supply our apps to our clients in Canada and in Ontario, if they have moved outside of Ontario, even very briefly, they can't gamble. They can use components of the app, but they can't make any transactions. That's the important thing, and that applies all across all to those states. So there's 38 states in the United States that allow sportsbook betting, for example, and not only do Apple and Google enforce that those products are geofenced and have an appropriate license, but also that regional regulator will also want to make sure that app will only allow that sportsbook activity to happen in that regulated, licensed state.
Right. And, just you were talking about the states that are now on board with this. What potential revenue is lost and by whom if they are not doing this properly? I mean, what is the scenario if you don't have good geolocation compliance, and, where does that lost money go, if you like?
So the really interesting thing I find right now is, and this is something that we're actually seeing very much across Canada. So, yeah, Canada and the US has national TV. You have national advertisers on TV in Canada whenever there's a sports event now, and as we all know, that the wonderful Canadians are slightly sports mad, crazy, we would probably say, and pretty much every advertorial space either side of that sporting event is generally filled with some level of sportsbook betting. Okay, or some form of gambling advertorial now, and what that has kind of done is it's educated other Canadians who live outside of Ontario that sportsbook gambling is effectively okay. It's on national TV. It's all in Ontario, and therefore, effectively, if it's okay for Ontario, it's okay for me. And a lot of people don't quite understand about the regional licensing and regional licensing policies. They think, well, if my friends in Ontario can do it, why can't I do it in British Columbia? Why can't I do it in Alberta or wherever? And that same kind of mentality is also happening now in the United States. The amount of advertising for sportsbook betting is predominant. It's everywhere. Yet of all the US states, only 38 are allowed legal sportsbook betting. So what's kind of happening is when people try to sportsbook bet in one of those states that doesn't allow it, the licensed and regulated operators won't allow them. So of course what they do is they fall back to those unregulated operators, what we generally call grey operators. Now there's two issues here that I see. Number one is, well, the world evolves around money, okay? And the world evolves around taxes in particular. And we all like our taxes. Well, we don't like to pay them, but we like the services that they supply, right? So all those states that aren't supporting online gambling, and particularly online sportsbook, are losing out on the revenue, the tax revenue they will get from real money gaming. So from one side of it, they're purely just losing tax dollars, okay? And where are those tax dollars going? Well, they're going to effectively offshore organizations who won't be putting that money back into society in, for example, California, which is the largest state in the US that currently doesn't have sportsbook betting. But also the other important thing about regulation is that it implies a sense of duty and customer care on the operator. And we call it responsible gambling rules. And effectively, the amount of money you're allowed to deposit, the amount of money you're allowed to withdraw, the amount that you can lose. And so there's health checks on people who lose more than X amount of dollars a day, a week, a month, what have you. And so if you fall into a losing pattern, they treat you with a certain type of regard. They help you out. They may give you a call. They may suspend your account, saying, "Oof, you're losing too much cash, dude," what have you. And there's the other side of it, which I think is crucially important, and something in the US the FBI are particularly interested in, is money laundering. And grey operators generally have very poor, relaxed, and maybe even favourable money laundering rules. Okay, whereas regulated operators have to conform to quite strict money laundering rules, and they need to understand where that money is coming from.
Yeah, indeed. It sounds like a win-win scenario, really. There's no reason for states not to regulate this. There's no reason for good geolocation compliance not to be installed where this happens, to make sure states get the benefit. That's right. And players get the benefit as well. But let's talk about, how this manifests, how this happens today. Now, the GLI compliance, the GLI standards side of things is very important to know about. And this is not light reading. This is a couple of key documents, so like, over 100 pages each, I believe. I must confess, I haven't actually read them cover to cover. But talk to us about what's happening in this world of regulation and how the kind of goalposts are shifting in 2024.
Yeah, it's really, so I think if we look at some of the more recent markets, I mean, the Ontario market is a really good one because it's a biggish market, a population of over 15 million people. So it's a fairly sizable market in its own right as a province in Canada, and an equivalent of a state in the US. So we look about that is there's two types of standards that people kind of put together. One is a kind of a very loosely defined standard. As an example, we want this level of reporting from you, and we make the statement that, as AGCO, the regulator in Ontario, said, is that only people who are in Ontario can gamble. So they don't tell you really how to enforce that, how to check that, what have you, but that's basically the high level obligation that you have. The other side of it is something that we often refer to as a technical gaming standard. And that's quite a bit more, I wouldn't say it's absolutely prescriptive, but it lays out a lot more of the rules and the expectations that you will have. Now, there's an organization out there that I think most people who are listening to this call will be aware of, which is Gaming Labs International, or GLI as they're more popularly known. And over the many, many years that they've been operating in this space, they've brought out standards, which are generally referred to as GLI XXX. And there's two particularly important ones that they've written over a course of many, many years, and have expanded them over those years. And there's one called GLI-33, which is what they call event-based wagering, which effectively means sportsbook betting for us, okay? And then there's GLI-19, which is effectively iGaming products, okay? And within those standards that GLI have written, it defines how you should go about your activities, including what the quite detail on what you should do for geo-compliance. Now, what tends to happen is that certain regulators will just quite literally take on board GLI-33 or GLI-19 and just say, that's our standard. Okay, conform to that and we're all happy. And then a test house such as GLI will test your app, your website, and see that it conforms to GLI-33 or GLI-19. Now, the other thing that often regulators do is they don't directly implement GLI-33, for example. They will take components out of it. And one of the terms is they will use what's often called local public policy. So they will define some of their own policy around it, but may use GLI-33 componentry within inside their own technical standard. And to some degree, that's exactly what AGCO have done. They've taken some observations out of GLI and have wrapped it around their local public policy. And we also see that with DGE, for example, in the US, where they have taken a large amount of componentry from GLI, but they have their own standard, and they have certain elements, particularly with inside geolocation, where they want a real-time heat map, for example. That's something they've decided that they need. Is not in GLI 19 or 33, but they feel that that's important for them to have, so they have real-time observation of where and how people are gambling in their location.
Fantastic. But how does this all kind of relate to something that many viewers may or may not have heard of? Of course, the Wire Act, which is where we get into the scenarios of orange jumpsuits.
Yeah, so I'm not a great favourite of orange jumpsuits, especially that I'm not the world's greatest Verstappen Formula One fan who's Dutch. So apologies to all my Dutch friends, but I'm not a great fan of orange either. So going way back, so in 2018, for example, it was declared that actually sportsbook betting was a legal activity in the United States. And there was different sort of rules associated with that, one of which was the right to actually place bets on a sportsman, which was part of the original kind of problem. But underlying that, which goes back many, many years, is something called the Wire Act. And the Wire Act was really brought in to stop people who had an advantage over a sports bookie. So the classic scenario is when a match is being played in New York State and somebody's placing a bet in San Francisco. And somebody who was at the location had more of an opportunity to understand what was going on in the event than the bookie in San Francisco because of the time delay. So the concept was, well, I'm in the location, I know what the result is, so I get onto the telegram and I wire my friend in San Francisco with advanced knowledge that one team has won over the other team. I placed a bet that the bookie doesn't know that, provides me favorable odds, and obviously I've manipulated the situation. So the Wire Act was kind of brought in to say, well, you can't do that. You cannot use telegraphy systems to place bets. Okay. And then the Wire Act kind of modified slightly was, well, you can use telegraphy systems if you're in state. Okay. So if I'm in New York State and I want to place a bet in New York State, technically I can use telegraphy, wireless systems, radio, whatever, to place a bet. And this has been going back and forth for many, many years to try and prove that. And it's eventually been decided actually the Wire Act applies for sportsbook betting in state. So providing you are in state, you can place a bet with an in-state operator. If you, as an operator, take a bet out of state, you are in breach of the Wire Act, which is a federal act. And therefore, if you are successfully prosecuted, as it's a federal crime, then you have the potential of going to prison. And that's where Orange comes in, because as we all know, all American inmates wear orange jumpsuits. So, but the important thing here is, I think, particularly in Europe, where there's a much more relaxed attitude to cross-border sportsbook betting, people don't perhaps quite appreciate the impact and the weight of the Wire Act on their responsibility to be a legitimate and a mindful operator. So with the customers that we're working with, obviously they are very sensitive to geo-compliance, but often when I'm speaking to people who are often coming from the European market and trying to operate in either the Canadian market or the US market, they have a slightly more relaxed view on taking bets outside of state. And just to enforce a point, it's critically important that you take this very, very seriously. And the major operators in the US take it extremely seriously.
This is not something that you want to mess around with. This could land you in that orange jumpsuit that we keep coming back to, because nobody wants to wear an orange jumpsuit, really, if we're honest with ourselves, aside from your friend, the amazing Dutch racing driver, of course. Now, but, geolocation compliance is not just about avoiding the unfavorable jumpsuit situation. It's also about improving customer experience. And I believe that there are a number of elements around the kind of things that you do that make it more frictionless for customers to get on board, to legally place bets and get engaged with the events that they like. And it's also kind of improving that customer experience on many levels in a way that the modern consumer really demands. So talk to us about that customer experience situation.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because nobody likes regulation. Nobody likes to have things enforced on them. Nobody likes speed limits. Nobody likes paying taxes, etc., etc. But these are all the facts of life. So what we do as a business, and as we come very much from the app world, and a lot of our underlying narrative with mkodo is all about great user experience, and that's where we have a big user experience development team. And when we're speaking to our clients, it's always about, if you're going to build an app, you have to build an app that is high quality, high value. Otherwise, you don't stand out in the market. Simple as that. So, but from a geo-compliance point of view, you also want to make sure that, yes, you are enforcing geo-compliance, but you're doing it in a way, and I often refer to these things called speed bumps, that we're trying to not create too many speed bumps in the user journey. And as we all know, you're driving down a lovely piece of road, you come across a speed bump. Not only does it slow you down, which is annoying, but the whole kind of feeling as you go over the speed bump and the kadonk as your car comes down on it, it's just not a nice experience. Yeah. So forget about the fact it slows you down. It's just uncomfortable. And so what we always try to do is, with our geo-compliance solutions, is remove as much of that uncomfort as we possibly can, but still allowing that compliance piece to function at the level that it needs to function. And that's one of the reasons why apps are critically important for geo-compliance, because we can remove a huge amount of the speed bumps and actually make the journey almost seamless. And in fact, I say almost seamless, after you've installed the app and accepted the geo allow or the location allow facility within inside your app, there are no more speed bumps.
Wow.
And that's the critical and important difference. We're not downloading some sort of nefarious app inside your Mac or your PC, which certainly nowadays has a lot of problems with inside GDPR in Europe, similar Canadian data privacy rules in Canada. And what we're starting to see is certain sort of PII concerns, personal identifiable information in the US, installing things onside your PC that audits your machine effectively, is not what people particularly want to do. And there's such more of an onus on privacy and data protection now than there ever has been. And this kind of goes against a lot of things the regulators are enforcing on us. They basically want to know everything about the bettor. But it's important, obviously, that the bettor feels comfortable that whatever information that they have to give is the minimal amount of information they need to give to provide the service and the regulatory controls. So for us, we're not there to audit anybody's machine or pull any sort of PII data out of the machine. It's just to get sufficient information out of their mobile phone or their laptop or whatever to conform to geo-compliance for the regulator.
Excellent. So you're smoothing down those speed bumps as much as humanly possible.
Correct.
One opt-in to the geolocation and you're good to go. Basically, you never hear from it again. That is brilliant for the end user. But what about the operators, the folks making the platforms that this technology is installed on? Like, how long would it take somebody to introduce this into an app they're going to launch or an existing app? I mean, what's a typical kind of life cycle of that installation?
Yeah, it's a really good point. I think it's an area that a lot of people forget about, is that if I've got my development team and they need to spend a month integrating a geo-compliance piece of capability, that's an expensive uplift. That's an expensive piece of work that I've got to do. And not only that, I've got to then take that through my own QA cycle, my system integration testing cycle, and then I potentially have to take that to somebody like GLI to do the verification and testing. So that whole piece is an expensive piece of work. Therefore, what you really need to do is that integration piece, where putting that geolocation compliance piece into your app or your website or what have you, needs to be as quick and as simple as possible. In other words, as painless as you possibly can, because you've got those other costs that are set. It doesn't matter which compliance organization you go with, you're going to have those pieces to deal with. So we're very proud of this, because I have this term, which is a bit of an unfavorable piece of term, but I call it eating your own dog food. And in mkodo land, we have two divisions to our business. We have our app business, and we have a completely separate side of our business, which is our geolocation business. Now, even though those engineers cohabit in the same office, and what we've tried to do is build our SDKs, which you install in your app or your website, to be almost literally plug and play. You just drop them in, and pretty much they work. They work kind of very autonomously. You just build your app just as a service layer around them, and they just do all the magic. You don't have to worry about it. And as a really good example of that, one of our clients, from receiving the SDK into their website, they operate in Ontario, from receiving the SDK from us and to delivering the website to us for us to review it, we do a testing cycle before we allow them to take it onto their next series of testing cycles. It took 5 days.
Wow.
Now, that is the best one I've seen, I'll be brutally honest, and I wouldn't suggest that everybody necessarily can do it in 5 days, but there's a challenge to any new customers out there that are going to come to us. But 5 days, and that is remarkably quick. Go literally from picking up the SDK and installing it and handing over the website for us to test it. It's 5 days. And our app is, and I'd actually would say that our app is probably even quicker to do.
Wow. My goodness. Well, hells to the yeah is all I can say to that. 5 days or less in some situations. And if people want to see more information about this, how do you productize this? Is there a name for this, suite of functionality?
Yeah. So our geo compliance product, we call it GeoLocs. And we actually have a geolocs.io site that you can go to, and you can find all the information on it. Equally, mkodo.com, and you will be led down to the GeoLocs pathway as well. But equally, you can just drop a note to hello@mkodo.com, and we will hello back to you. Please contact us, and we can give you some more information and more support. And inside that, as well as the locations that we have licenses for. And the interesting thing we haven't really discussed, but we can quickly talk about this, that in some US states you have to have effectively a service supply license or a technology supply license, and in other states in the US you don't need to. You're not considered to be necessary to have that license, but obviously the total product that our component would be in needs to be validated and tested so that it meets either GLI-33 or GLI-19. You'll be waking up in the middle of the night, Oisin, thinking about these numbers, I can see, or when you're buttering your toast in the morning, as I know you're a toast
Yes.
man, you'll be going indeed. GLI-33, but they need to be verified and tested, and in fair, and we actually call this an attestation test. Yeah. So you will attest that your product meets the standard. Now, either that's the, as we mentioned, the local public standard of the regulator, or maybe it's GLI-33, or if it's iGaming, GLI-19.
Now, this is coming big time to the US. There's lots happening over there. And I believe that yourself and the team at mkodo are going to be at the wonderful SBC North America. And you're going to be sharing some big news over there. Would you like to whet people's appetite?
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm really looking forward to it. It's always a great event, actually, up in New York, and enjoy it greatly. So I look forward to seeing everybody there. So we've got some exciting new products that we're bringing out, which are specifically for the more compliant areas, so Wire Act based, and again, I'm not going to say too much about it now, but these are all products there that are really focused on the prevailing and the change that we will be seeing, particularly in North America, about privacy. So how can we enforce a high level of geocompliance? How can we make sure that we understand the person's location very accurately without impinging on their privacy? So we have some products, very exciting products that are coming out. They also have some other aspects of them that are very exciting. So come to our stand at SBC North America and talk more and discuss more with us.
Fantastic. Well, what a perfect invitation to round things off. If you are even thinking about launching in the States, you need to get yourself over to SBC North America, chat to Stuart and his colleagues at mkodo, and do reach out to them through the website, through hello@mkodo.com, right? Is that it?
Absolutely.
Yes. And drop them a line and meet up. But listen, we have run out of time, I'm afraid. That's been utterly fascinating. I was expecting nothing less. Thank you so much for your time and your expertise and everything you're doing for the industry. Stuart Godfree and the wonderful people at mkodo.
Thanks, Oisin. Always a pleasure. I look forward to seeing and catching up with you soon.
Absolutely. My dear friends from Next.io, thank you so much for joining us for this fascinating spotlight on geolocation compliance with Stuart Godfree from mkodo. We look forward to seeing you the next time. Take care.